Together, The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 make up my favorite story of all time, ranging across the entire entertainment industry, not just video games. Hopefully, I made that pretty clear in my videos so far. Moving on, at the point of writing this, David Jaffe is a YouTube content creator. He's also the creator of hit franchises like God of War and Twisted Metal. And on his channel, he has various gaming-related shows that I watch constantly. On certain shows, he invites big names from the industry as his guests, where you can get invaluable information about how the industry works. Normally, you wouldn't be able to access that information anywhere else. That's because he was deep within the video game trenches as a game designer, creative director, and so on for 24 years and knows exactly what to ask. Now, to get to my point, on a particular live show, he had Troy Baker on as a guest. And on that show, David Jaffe managed to do something that shattered my reality for a minute and just made my brain have a heart attack.
Joel, how you doing, bud?
I guess I'm all right.
I think even Troy was surprised by that.
May I speak with Joel one last time?
You got it.
Joel, you there?
Oh, hell yeah.
I just want to let you know, man, and this is going to sound corny and I don't care, and you may not even understand it, but there's something about the way you live your life that inspires me and it connects with me. I do think I genuinely have affection for you. I love you, Joel, and I miss you.
Well, I ain't never been much for words, but let me just say thank you kindly.
All right. Thank you, Joel.
For that short duration, my heart felt overwhelmed with both joy and grief because never in a million years would I have expected to see my favorite character of all time alive again. And I don't mean in a remake or in a TV show. This wasn't written down only to be read as intended. That moment was pure magic because it just felt so real, so visceral to me that my mind went into a wormhole and all I could think was, is this actually happening? By doing that sudden seance meeting with Troy, I heard Joel talk back in real time, outside of a script rather than inside a game. He was answering Jaffe like a flesh and bone real person, and this moment feels even more authentic when you just close your eyes and listen to it. Cause there is no more Troy with the voice of Joel. What's left is just, well, you know exactly what I want to say. Now, if someone else would have impersonated Joel, it probably wouldn't have had that much of an impact on me, because the illusion would have been lifted, it being intended for a comical purpose like an SNL sketch or whatever. But because it was Troy, a man that loves Joel second to none, it made that moment be so authentic. It gave meaning to everything, at least to me, for a couple of seconds.
Yeah. Good night, kiddo.
And hearing Joel speak from the great beyond stuck in my head for a couple of days after that. And one fateful night at 3 a.m. being woken up by, well, nothing really, it gave way to an idea. The idea was that we could see Joel again. He doesn't have to be dead. Well, at least he doesn't have to stay dead. Now, bear with me for a bit. While playing part 1, I always thought that David was an amazing character. Even to this day, I still think he would make an awesome protagonist in a standalone Last of Us game. I'm thinking something in the lines of Rise of the Governor, the book from The Walking Dead. For instance, David could be this pre-apocalyptic weakling, but later on, given the opportunity, he slowly turns into a monster. Anyway, with that in mind, I sort of applied the same treatment to Joel. A game where you play as him in those missing 20 years from The Last of Us Part 1. In the very first video I made for this channel, I stated that Joel wasn't a Boy Scout before the apocalypse hit, and that he didn't transform into a ruthless killing machine out of nowhere, and that the darkness within him was always buried deep inside. Sarah's death was just the warrant it needed to surface and take over. The thing is, we never got to see how Joel actually became the darkest version of him. We were just handed that premise, no questions asked. I don't think I'd be alone in saying that I would love to see such a game where Joel goes through this insane character arc that compromises his soul. Now, there's this scene where we're witness to a major difference in essence between Joel and Tommy.
This is how you gonna repay me, huh?
Repay you?
For all those goddamn years I took care of us.
Took care. That's what you call it? I got nothing but nightmares from those years.
You survived because of me!
It wasn't worth it?
What we can deduce from that is that Tommy never completely went down the dark path because it just wasn't how he functioned at his core. Whereas his big brother was of a different nature, always finding solace in the fact that no matter how grave his sins were, it was always about survival. A trait that again emerges opposite Tess.
Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors!
This is our chance!
It is over, Tess!
Joel doesn't look back. He gives us the impression that he wipes clean the memory of the past and always looks towards the now. I believe that he isn't even focused on the future, but only lives in the present. At least that's how I saw him in the first half of the first part when he was a smuggler. Coming back to my fantasy game where he joined the Hunters with Tommy, I think that would be an amazing opportunity to write a brilliant, visceral story that would make us fans, at least in the first half, feel repulsion for Joel's actions. Obviously, we'd know that losing his daughter would be the catalyst for all of that, but still, let's say that he had to torture or kill innocent people unwillingly in order to survive alongside Tommy as hunters, as some sort of rite of passage or something along those lines. The point of that would be to surface the fact that Joel isn't this unilateral hero that many believe him to be. Keep in mind that he damned the entire world in a selfish act to save his pseudo-daughter. The point of such a chapter within the main story of this prequel, or however you want to call it, would be to further point out the brutal nature of humanity and the complexity of it as well. I think that we're too used to absolutes and rarely do we get to see nuances in stories that tell a believable, relatable human story. And more often than not, we get to see these extreme symbols that represent an ideal, a goal to aim towards. Superman would be such an example because he is the embodiment of what men should tend to become from a moral standpoint. Sound familiar? And I think that seeing Joel in this brutal light where he isn't the soft old man Logan from part 2 would be an amazing contrast with the person he ended up being. But more than that, the cathartic shock we would experience when we would have to commit heinous acts on innocent people as Joel would forever be remembered by the people who truly love this character. The brilliant part could be that all of his lack of morals and struggles with regret would be in contrast to Tommy not being able to cope with his brother committing such repulsive acts. Tommy could serve as a superb moral guideline to keep Joel in check at key points during the story, as to not completely lose himself. We could also see how they met Tess, how they developed a survival-based relationship. I think all of the elements for a prequel are there. It's just that someone needs to write and direct it. And sadly, I don't think Neil Druckmann has the time for that anymore. He is the co-president of Naughty Dog, so he has a lot of executive responsibility on his head, and he is also co-writing the upcoming Last of Us TV show. And that's if he's not co-writing Last of Us Part 3 or whatever. Jaffe even made a compelling point saying that if all Neil wants is to tell stories, why would he return to video games if he can just make TV shows or movies to tell them there? But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I didn't want to take too much of your time with my half-assed scripts, but I just wanted to say enough to plant the idea in your head. I want to see Joel alive again, and I'm sure that everyone that loves him wants to as well. This would be absolutely amazing for PlayStation from a marketing standpoint. I just hope the TV show won't be about what I've just said, because that would be extremely disappointing for us gamers. Imagine seeing Joel go through those missing 20 years and not being able to play as him, to feel the burden of his choices on your shoulders while you hold that controller in your hands. I think that would be such a tragic loss for video games. That's my opinion at least. What do you guys think? Am I just talking out of my ass over here? I would immensely appreciate your input. Also, thank you for watching and staying alongside me until the end. Hope to see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.